Ancient Egypt. Undiscussed facts to fall asleep to. Segment 1. Daily life along the Nile. Welcome to a journey back in time, to the land of the pharaohs, where the Nile flowed gently through golden sands, and life unfolded in ways both familiar and wonderfully strange. Let yourself relax as we explore the intimate details of how people truly lived in ancient Egypt, facts that rarely make it into the history books. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and drift along the Nile with me. Fact 1. The ancient Egyptian perfume cone. Imagine attending a dinner party in ancient Egypt. As you arrive, your host places something unusual on your head, a cone of scented fat mixed with myrrh and cinnamon. Throughout the evening, as you sit and talk and laugh, this cone slowly melts in the desert heat, releasing its fragrance and coating your wig and shoulders with perfumed oil. This wasn't considered messy or strange. It was luxury. It was style. The wealthy would wear these perfume cones to banquets, letting the scent announce their presence and mask the less pleasant smells of daily life. Archaeological evidence from tomb paintings shows guests wearing these cones, though interestingly, no physical examples have ever been found. Perhaps they melted away entirely, leaving only their memory in art and imagination. Fact 2. Sleeping on stone pillows. When an ancient Egyptian went to bed, they didn't rest their head on soft down or feathers. Instead, they used a headrest made of wood, stone, or ceramic. These curved supports elevated the head, keeping elaborate hairstyles intact and allowing air to flow around the neck in the stifling heat. The headrests were deeply personal items, often decorated with protective gods and inscribed with the owner's name. Some were adorned with images of Bes, the dwarf god who protected sleep and drove away nightmares. While it seems uncomfortable to us, ancient Egyptians grew accustomed to these hard pillows from childhood. In fact, these headrests were so valued that they were often buried with their owners, ensuring comfortable sleep in the afterlife. The poor used folded cloth or leather, but the principle remained the same. Keep the head elevated, keep the hairstyle perfect, stay cool through the desert night. Fact 3. Beer for breakfast, beer for payment. In ancient Egypt, beer wasn't just a beverage. It was breakfast. It was currency. It was nutrition. Every morning, workers, scribes, and even children drank thick, porridge-like beer made from partially baked bread crumbled into water and left to ferment. This beer was nutritious, providing calories and vitamins that pure water couldn't offer. It was safer than Nile water, which could carry disease. Workers building the pyramids received beer as part of their daily wages, sometimes 4 to 5 liters per day for the hardest laborers. The beer was sweet, slightly sour, and had to be drunk through a straw to filter out the bits of grain and bread that floated in it. Women primarily brewed this beer at home, and brewing was considered an honorable, essential skill. The goddess Tenenet was the divine brewer, and Hathor herself was sometimes called the Lady of Drunkenness. So when you picture ancient Egypt, don't imagine water with dinner. Imagine beer with everything from dawn until dusk, thick and sustaining and absolutely central to life. Fact 4. The truth about makeup. Both men and women in ancient Egypt wore elaborate eye makeup, but this wasn't vanity alone. The thick lines of kohl served a practical purpose beyond beauty. The dark pigments, made from ground galena or malachite mixed with animal fat, helped reduce the sun's glare, much like a modern athlete's eye black. Even more remarkably, recent analysis has shown that the lead-based compounds in Egyptian eye makeup helped prevent eye infections. The lead salts stimulated the body's immune system to fight bacterial infections that were common along the dusty, wind-swept Nile. Egyptian physicians actually prescribed specific eye makeup formulas as medicine. So when you see those dramatic eyes in ancient art, remember, They were seeing more clearly, staying healthier, and looking magnificent all at once. Children as young as toddlers wore kohl, and workers in the fields lined their eyes just as elaborately as nobles in palaces. In a land of blazing sun and blowing sand, makeup was medicine. Fact 5. The onion under the pillow. Ancient Egyptians had a curious relationship with onions. These bulbs were so valued that they were used as payment, left as offerings to the gods, and even placed in the eye sockets of mummies. But in daily life, onions served an even more intimate purpose. When someone fell ill, families would place onions under the sick person's pillow or in their rooms, believing the strong-smelling bulb would ward off disease and purify the air. Some would bind cut onions to the soles of their feet before sleep, thinking the onion would draw out fever and toxins by morning. Onions were thought to have protective and healing powers, perhaps because they made people cry. If something could produce tears, surely it was powerful. At funerals, mourners would wave onions to help produce the tears expected of them. The layers of an onion were seen as symbols of eternal life, each layer representing a level of existence. So the humble onion was everywhere in Egyptian life. In the soup, in the tomb, under the pillow, and bringing forth tears of both sorrow and healing. Fact 6. Letters to the dead. When ancient Egyptians lost someone they loved, they didn't simply mourn and move on. They wrote letters. These weren't symbolic gestures. They were actual letters, written on bowls, linen, or papyrus, and left at tombs or in shrines. In these letters, the living would ask the dead for help with everyday problems. A widow might write to her deceased husband, asking him to intervene with the gods about her ill child. A son might complain to his dead father about a business dispute, asking for protection or guidance. Some letters were affectionate, updating the departed on family news. Others were angry, accusing the dead of causing problems for the living and demanding they stop. These weren't prayers exactly. They were conversations. The dead were believed to be active members of the family still, capable of helping or hindering the living. One particularly touching letter from a man to his dead wife reads, "What evil have I done that I should be in this wretched state? What have I done to you that you lay hands upon me, though I did nothing evil to you?" The boundary between life and death was thin and permeable, and love, anger, and negotiation could cross it freely. Fact 7. The smell of Egypt. Close your eyes and imagine the scent of ancient Egypt. It wasn't the sterile smell of museum exhibits. The air was thick with fragrance and funk. Incense burned constantly in temples. Kifi, a complex blend of 16 ingredients including honey, wine, myrrh, and juniper, filled the air at sunset. In homes, people burned incense to mask odors and to create ambience. But underneath the perfumes was the smell of life. Onions frying in oil, beer fermenting in huge clay jars, linen being washed in natron and water, the warm scent of baking bread, and yes, the less pleasant smells of the street. Most homes had no running water, and waste management was basic. The wealthy used elaborate toilets, wooden seats over sand-filled containers, while the poor made do with simpler arrangements. But everyone burned incense, wore perfumed oils, and kept their homes as fragrant as possible. The contrast was everything. The sweet smell of lotus flowers floating in wealthy gardens, the sharp tang of natron used in laundry and mummification, the musky scent of castor oil used in lamps. Ancient Egypt was a symphony of scents, intentional and unavoidable, pleasant and necessary. Fact 8. Divorce was simple. In ancient Egypt, marriage didn't require elaborate ceremonies or priestly approval. A couple simply moved in together, usually after the groom provided gifts to the bride's family. And divorce was equally straightforward. If a marriage wasn't working, either party could end it, though men initiated divorce more often. The phrase, "I divorce you," spoken before witnesses was sometimes sufficient. Women could keep their own property and had the right to own land, run businesses, and retain their dowries. If a man divorced his wife without cause, he had to provide her with financial support. If a woman initiated the divorce, the terms were negotiated. Children typically stayed with the mother. One divorce document reads simply, "I divorce you as wife, I have no claim on you." Another shows a woman divorcing her husband and keeping her considerable property. While men had more social power overall, Egyptian women had remarkable legal and economic rights for the ancient world. Marriage was practical, based on partnership and economics as much as love. And when partnership failed, the law provided clear, relatively equitable paths forward. No shame, no scandal necessarily. Just the acknowledgement that sometimes people needed to part ways. Fact 9. The Festival of Drunkenness. Once a year, ancient Egyptians celebrated the Festival of Drunkenness, dedicated to the goddess Hathor. This wasn't a solemn religious observance. It was a legitimate excuse for the entire population to get wildly intoxicated. The festival commemorated a myth in which Hathor, in her form as the violent lioness Sekhmet, was stopped from destroying humanity by being tricked into drinking beer dyed red to look like blood. She drank so much she became too drunk to continue her rampage and transformed back into the gentle Hathor. To honor this, Egyptians would gather in temples, drink enormous quantities of beer and wine, dance, feast, and celebrate until they passed out. Temple reliefs show people being carried home by servants, vomiting, and generally engaging in behavior that would otherwise be condemned. This was sacred drunkenness, a religious duty. Music played, couples disappeared into the night together, and normal social rules suspended. The next morning, priests would wake the hungover masses by banging on drums, representing Hathor waking in her gentle form. Imagine an entire civilization with a yearly religiously mandated party, where excess wasn't just permitted but required. That was ancient Egypt. Fact 10. Sleeping by the river's edge. On hot summer nights, when the heat became unbearable even after sunset, many Egyptians would take their sleeping mats outside. Some would sleep on their flat rooftops under the stars, where any breeze could reach them. Others, particularly in villages along the Nile, would sleep by the river's edge, listening to the water lap against the banks and the calls of night birds. The danger of crocodiles and hippos was real but manageable. People knew which areas were safe, which times of night were dangerous, and how to sleep in groups for protection. The river itself was both blessing and threat, provider and danger. But the cool air that rose from the water made the risk worthwhile. Families would spread mats in their small gardens, if they had them, surrounded by the evening scent of night-blooming flowers. The wealthy had servants fan them with palm fronds through the night. But rich and poor alike understood that in the desert heat of an Egyptian summer, walls could become ovens, and sleep required surrender to the open air, to the night sky, to the proximity of water and whatever wild things the darkness held. And so the first day in ancient Egypt comes to a close. The perfume cones have melted, the beer jars are empty, the letters to the dead are written and delivered. People settle onto their hard pillows, makeup still lining their eyes, onions under their beds, and drift to sleep under stars that have watched over the Nile for thousands of years. Rest now. More wonders await, but for now, simply rest.